On this episode of Georgia Outdoors, we'll explore the many ways exotic plant and animal species affect our lives and environment. From the annual Fire Ant Festival in Ashburn, Georgia, to English ivy growing in your backyard. Plus, we'll have a visit from gardening guru Walter Reeves. Coming up next on Georgia Outdoors. We often think of the term exotic as meaning something unusual or exciting, exotic locales, foods, or cultures. But when applied to plants and wildlife, exotic simply refers to an organism that isn't native to the area. There are many exotic species in Georgia, some of which have caused serious problems to our native wildlife. Perhaps the most irritating and well-known of these is the aggressive South American fire ant. But one Georgia community has found a unique way of coping with this invasion.
We've got a lot of notoriety about the Fire Ant Festival just because it's different and unique. We do something different every year, something kind of off the wall, something wacky, and just have fun with it.
Where else can you find a fire ant, a giant fire ant, coming down the road on a Harley Hog motorcycle with Elvis right behind him?
I really enjoyed it because everybody's paying attention to me and everything. They respect the fire ant a lot.
We sponsor the Fire Ant Festival because it's a pretty big event. It pokes fun at a serious problem. It's a fun way for us to draw attention to a very serious problem.
How would I describe the character of the fire ant? Tenacious. Their Latin name, Solenopsis invicta. Invicta, they definitely are invincible.
This is my kind of weather and this is my kind of place because the more people there are, the more I get to shoot on.
The festival started about 8 years ago, and we wanted something different that would catch people's attention. And we thought since Ashburn is a small town, we're kind of like fire ants. We're small but industrious, and you can't kill us. Had good crowds, but I think we've got a better crowd this year than ever before, probably just because of the pretty weather, first day of spring, people ready to get out. But we estimate probably 10,000 to 12,000 people here this year, and that's about 8,000 more than we have here on any other day of the week.
I think it's great. There's a certain irony that we're making the best of what we've got, realizing, hey, if you can't beat them, join them.
The Fire Ant Calling Contest is coming up in just a few minutes, so if you haven't signed up for that...
Well, this year, of course, we had the big Fire Ant Calling Contest.
Let's hear your version of a Fire Ant call, okay? Hey, Fire Ant! Well, that'll work, okay. Call Fire Ant, call out Fire Ant. Woo! Fire Ant! Fire Ant! Oh! Oh! Fire Ant!
Of course, we had the fire ant fling, where we see how far we can fling a fire ant, just a plastic fire ant, of course. So we just try to do something different and off the wall every year.
Well, this is a wonderful venue. It's a non-scientific venue. It's great for us to provide our message that we have about a safe alternative to pesticides for fire ant control. It's right in the center of Fire Ant Central here. Everywhere you go, you see fire ant mounds. Large ones, small ones. We have no problem finding mounds.
Most of the questions people ask me about fire ants, how can we kill them? How can we get rid of them? We're trying to manage them, trying to show people, use the products that are out there for baiting or contact. Please don't use gasoline to kill them. That's really bad for the environment. We've tried eradication, and it's really not going to work. So we're trying to deal with the fire ants and minimize their effects. But fire ants are here to stay.
Most Southerners have encountered these highly aggressive bugs at one time or another. But where did this insect invader come from? Kenneth Ross of the University of Georgia is conducting research to learn more about the origin and social behavior of the fire ant.
The serious pest species that we have here now is not a native species. They were first noticed around the port of Mobile, Alabama in the early 1930s, so it's assumed that they arrived via shipping of some sort from South America. But we do have at least 2 or 3 native fire ant species. With its arrival, it's all but driven to extinction, the native species.
Fire ants reproduce rapidly. One reproducing queen can quickly establish a mound, and a mature mound can house up to 500,000 ants, an enormous nuclear family. As many of us know, fire ants are fiercely defensive of their mother and siblings. They aren't likely to turn the other cheek.
Fire ants are the only social insects that I know of that if they get on you, they will sting you. If a foraging wasp or honeybee happens to land on you, as long as you don't pester it will leave you alone. But fire ants are very pugnacious and aggressive in their behavior, and they seem to be unable to resist stinging any animal that they come upon.
Fire ants are hard to control in our region because they have very few natural predators. One possibility for controlling them is to introduce a predator from their native habitat into ours. In South America, one such creature is the ford fly, or decapitating fly. To reproduce, this tiny fly lays its egg in the body of a live fire ant.
That egg will then hatch into a larva, and the larva will move into the head. And after about 3 weeks, the head of the fire ant will pop off, and an adult fly will emerge.
Though scientists are looking for ways to control the species, these determined bugs are here to stay. And it's important to remember that ants, even fire ants, can play an important role in their environment.
In normal circumstances, ants are actually very important and play crucial ecological roles. So we should not seek to exterminate all ants. What we need to do is try to reduce circumstances by which insects are introduced inadvertently into new habitats, because that's when they become serious ecological problems.
Anytime a non-native animal is introduced into a habitat that the animals that are already there did not evolve with that animal, you have a potential for damage to that habitat and to those animal species to occur.
There are many other animals common in Georgia which haven't always been permanent residents.
Starlings and English or house sparrows were introduced into the United States in the 1850s. In Georgia, they have had some impacts in our native songbirds. Bluebirds is a prominent example of that. They compete directly with the bluebirds for nesting cavities. Coyotes made it into Georgia through a natural range expansion from the west. They also were helped a little bit by illegal releases in several locations in the state. Armadillos came to Georgia from South America through Texas and Louisiana, and they also were helped by some illegal releases down in Florida.
The term feral refers to animals which were once domesticated but have been released or escaped and revert to a wild state. Cumberland Island on Georgia's coast is home to a small group of feral horses. The number of horses on the island has risen and fallen since they were introduced by Spanish explorers more than 400 years ago. Today, a pocket of horses remains on the island, and because they are an exotic species, their presence has been a source of debate.
They do have impacts on the environment. Some people believe that the horses should be removed from the island. Some people see the horses as part of the cultural resource here because they were brought here in the prior to this becoming a national seashore. So our difficulty is to try to find some kind of balance that maximizes the protection of the resource, both the natural and the cultural resources.
Feral hogs were also introduced by Spanish explorers. They reproduce rapidly, and the expanding population has caused serious problems for our native wildlife.
Feral hogs are probably one of the most destructive exotic mammals that we have in the state. They're They compete directly with a wide variety of native wildlife through consumption of food. They also eat almost anything that can't get out of their way. Their rooting behavior removes rootstock of plants. They'll eat the eggs of ground nesting birds and even nestling rabbits and other small mammals that can't get out of their way.
Feral hog populations on the coast have also had a devastating impact on nest sites of the endangered loggerhead sea turtle.
Feral hogs are particularly destructive, and they can take if they are involved in a nest depredation, they generally take all the eggs. As recently as 1990, we've lost up to 70% of our nests on some of our barrier islands, and so we have some predator removal programs on many of the more remote islands where feral hogs are abundant.
Another domesticated animal that can wreak havoc on native wildlife when on the loose may be closer than you think.
There are two situations where house cats can be real problems to native wildlife. The first is the true feral house cat that are actually living and surviving and reproducing in the woods and around farms. The other group of house cats are those that belong to people that are allowed to range free-ranging house cats. And they also, even though they're fed at home, their natural instinct is to hunt. And they can have an impact on songbird populations and small mammal populations around the homes where they live.
If a common house cat can be a problem, imagine what a tiger on the run could do. In Georgia, it is not legal to hold wild animals as pets, and a wild animal can be anything from a chipmunk to a cougar. When these animals are confiscated, they're often placed in a licensed facility like this one, Noah's Ark in Locust Grove, Georgia.
Noah's Ark is a rehabilitation center for animals and a place for children to come and live that have no place else to go. The exotic animals stay here for the rest of their life. The animals that come from like Africa and India and China and different places like that because they don't have any place to go. And then, of course, wildlife we release back to the wild. And that's, your Georgia wildlife.
One of the main reasons for not allowing exotic animals as pets is because when they do get bigger, more difficult to handle and temperamental, people would commonly let them go. Those animals can carry diseases. Those animals could grow up to be large or dangerous to the people. And the animals themselves, they may be from places like Africa or China or things like that. They may not even have out in the wild what's necessary for them to survive.
Once you get around animals and you learn about them or study them, you still love them as much, but then you respect them for who they are, and you realize how dangerous they are and how quickly they'll turn on you. I don't care what anybody says. We have signs all over the place that says any animal with a hoof will kick you, any animal with teeth will bite you, and any animals with claws will scratch you. It makes no difference. About 39,000 people, we think, visits every year. We have no real tracking method because we don't charge for you to visit Noah's Ark. I can't save the world. All I can save is this little tiny world I have here. Once it comes through the gate, I'll save it, regardless if it's a human or if it's an animal. It's safe. We'll protect it.
Georgia's waterways are home to some of the most fragile ecosystems in the state, and some of the most sensitive to exotic species introduction. Aquatic nuisance species like the blueback herring have a severe impact on native fish and aquatic life. There are many ways you can help reduce the impact of aquatic nuisance species. Always clean your boat thoroughly after use to avoid carrying species from waterway to waterway. Never release unused bait fish into the water. Do not release pet fish or animals into the wild. Contact this website to find out about the Aquatic Hitchhikers campaign and learn ways you can help keep our native aquatic species safe from exotic invaders.
Georgia's plant species provide the foundation for our native ecosystem. Our native plants exist in harmony with the wildlife that subsists upon them. But what happens when non-native species invade our landscape? Coming up, we'll take a look at a few invasive exotic plant species and show you some creative ways to help reduce them from spreading.
Well, a few years ago, a group called the Georgia Exotic Pest Plant Council got people together to come up with a list of the 10 worst invasive weeds of natural areas. Not surprisingly, kudzu made the list. It was brought here primarily for erosion control, and it was tried out as a cattle feed. Asian cattle seem to have developed a taste for it that our American cattle have yet to develop. The erosion control was not particularly effective. However, the planting of it was. We all have seen how it can blanket a tree.
Though not as well known as kudzu, Chinese privet is a serious problem through much of the state. Introduced as a privacy hedge in 1852, this hardy evergreen plant forms dense thickets, blocking sunlight and making it impossible for the seedlings of other plants to grow.
A third plant is Chinese tallow tree, which is infesting the coastal areas of Georgia, on a par with what Chinese privet is doing on most of the rest of the state.
Also included in Georgia's top 10 invasive exotic plants are deceptively attractive ornamentals, such as Chinese wisteria, Japanese honeysuckle, and mimosa, which may be beautiful, but can quickly spread across the landscape.
And then there's hydrilla, which is an aquatic plant from South America that is choking some of our waterways. Microstegium is a grass from West Asia, taking over the northern half of the state in shaded woodlands.
Rounding out the list are autumn olive and golden bamboo. Though golden bamboo is the only bamboo that made the top 10, there are many other invasive types of this Asian plant, some of which are enjoyed by 2 of Georgia's other exotic residents, Yun-Yun and Lulu at the Atlanta Zoo. These voracious bears consume between 40 and 80 pounds of bamboo apiece per day, and the bamboo they eat isn't shipped in from China. Most of it comes from sites across Georgia, collected by this crack team of bamboo technicians.
We have bamboo donors all over Georgia that call us on our bamboo hotline. We go out and we harvest bamboo from their yards, and we've been doing that for about 3 years now. Is how we get our bamboo, from the friendly people of Georgia.
How's that one look, Larry?
Good. Well, when I moved into my house in 1995, the bamboo was quite attractive, and I thought that it would be a nice screen, and I learned very quickly that it's a very invasive type plant.
A lot of the sites, the bamboo has taken over the landscape. It has rhizomes, which is the root system it puts out, and anywhere those rhizomes spread, because bamboo is a grass, and it is a runner, then you can have a piece of bamboo. We've seen it coming up through pools, tennis courts, in people's foundations of their houses.
What we do, we cut it straight down to the ground with saws, take all the trash, we're clean with our thing, we do our job thoroughly.
After we harvest the bamboo, we bundle it up into roughly 5.5 to 6 kilo bundles. We have to keep it clean because it is considered a food item.
We cut it with disinfected tools, we put it on disinfected tarps, on the ground, on a disinfected tarp in the truck. It's brought back and put on a tarp on the disinfected tarp on our dock and cleaned and then taken right to a disinfected cooler. So we do treat it like a food.
All this work is done to make sure the pandas get the bamboo they need, and their taste can fluctuate.
The bamboos they like depend on the season. During the winter they tend to eat the stems or culm of the bamboo, and during the summer they tend to eat more of the leaves. And the species depends on the type of year. They're specialized to eat bamboo. They have what's called a pseudo thumb, and it's actually an extension of the wrist bone that they can grip bamboo. Unlike other bears, it's not an actual thumb, but they can manipulate the bamboo to eat it.
Me and the pandas got our own little bond, you know. I love them. They feed me, I feed them.
Invasive exotic plants pose a serious threat to our native species. The Georgia Native Plant Society has made it their mission to protect our valuable native flora, not only from invasives, but also from an even bigger threat, land development. Today, they're on a native plant rescue, saving plants from a site in Suwanee, Georgia, that will soon become a town center.
The society was formed in 1994 by some concerned citizens that all of our native flora was vanishing.
The rescue program worked with property owners and developers, and we get permission from them to go into sites where they're going to develop and remove and relocate some of the native plants that otherwise would be lost.
To me, it's very important to save these plants, to me personally, and I don't exactly know why, except I just feel very strongly about the fact that my grandchildren need to know what these plants look like. My ancestors used a lot of these plants, and my grandchildren, if everything keeps being bulldozed down, then my grandchildren aren't going to know what they look like. And environmentally, we have to start thinking about using the plants that are native to this state as opposed to bringing in the exotic stuff that isn't supposed to be here.
Because invasive exotic plants are so abundant, it's surprising that anyone would want to buy them. But despite the damage they can do to our landscape, many exotics like English ivy continue to be sold at garden stores. When planning your garden, it's important to keep in mind which plants to avoid. And who better to ask about buying plants and controlling invasives than Gardening in Georgia host Walter Reeve.
So non-native exotics are plants that we need to sort of keep in our mind. Plants that can become pests, can become problems if we plant them. Privet can be a problem. That's sold in the nursery still. We've got the English ivy that's sold in the nursery still. Even sometimes the running bamboos you see sold, as well as the wisteria sold in the nursery. It's always a good idea to keep in mind the potential problem that these plants can pose to you in your landscape. But let's talk about English ivy, Teresa. I know that you get really excited when you get the chance to control English ivy. And we've got a problem. We've got this English ivy desert right here. In fact, I saw that we have one tree that, oh gosh, look how it's bent over there. It's bent over backwards from the weight of the English ivy there.
Right, especially since the plant is evergreen, it holds, and this is a lot of surface area for ice and things like that in the winter, and the weight can just be too much for even a mature tree.
All right, grab your loppers over there, and let's talk about how to control ivy. Now, it's not a parasite, right? It doesn't suck juice or sap out of the tree.
Right, all of the energy that it gets comes up from the soil and up the vine into the tree.
So then all we really have to do to get the rest of the vine killed up here would be to cut it down low here.
Right, it'll die above the cut.
Okay. So I'm seeing as I'm clearing off the ivy leaves here that you have this really hairy vine. What does that remind you of?
Reminds me of poison ivy.
Are we sure this is English ivy and not poison ivy?
Yes, we're sure.
All right, we've got the vine established and we know it's not poison ivy, so what do you do then?
Well, at this point, we would probably want to pry it away from the tree trunk and get in there with the loppers.
I brought a tool that I like to use to pry things off of tree trunks, and that's a screwdriver, a hammer right here. So we'll just get behind it and give you some room to work. Because it's tightly adhered.
It is just snug right to the trunk. And that's a problem because it does damage the bark a little bit. And even with this prying, we're going to get in here.
You see if you can get the lopper behind it and give it a cut. Oh, levers. Yes, sir. There we come. All right. There we go. All right, so we've got that one vine down, and we can continue going around this tree, and also can pull up the vines that are here on the ground around it and clear an area around the tree. So let's work a little bit and get the English ivy cleared around these couple of trees right here. I'm going to show everybody what can be done and what should be done whenever you have English ivy that's escaped into the woody parts of the landscape. Get the little, I pull it up. All right, feel better now?
Oh, much better.
I'm glad you do. This is, wow, look at the root on this thing. That is huge. They can be, pretty energetic when they invade the outdoors. Now, we use loppers and my screwdriver and pruners here. What are some other tools you can use to get ivy back under control?
Some other tools that you can use are a hand saw, and this tool, this sort of hand hoe, either side is good. This is good for pulling the English ivy on the ground. And if you were encounter something you wanted to chop, you could just chop it with this.
And you know, I thought to myself as we were working here, the best tool you can have is a partner to come out and work with you, somebody who can clip while you're pulling to get the roots identified. So that really is a two-person job to get English ivy under control. So how long will it take before the vine dies, you think?
Well, technically, it's already dead. It's been cut away from its nutrients. I would say we're probably going to start to see some wilting in about a week, maybe 2.
English ivy can be a really, really, really nuisance pest, a non-native exotic. And speaking of non-native exotics, Ms. Shrum, I have privet hedge on the other side of the fence over here.
Let's go take care of that.
All right, bring some tools. And let's go over there. Bring the loppers right here. I think that'd be a good tool. Privet, you've met your match.
There's much to be done in controlling the spread of invasive non-native species. And the plants and animals we've highlighted on this program represent only a sample of exotic species in Georgia. In order to fight this problem, we must remain constantly aware of the threats many of these plant and animal invaders pose to our ecosystem.
To me, the crux of the matter is that these are a form of pollution, the biological pollution. And it's the only kind of pollution there is that reproduces itself. And so it's not something that can just be left to be done tomorrow, because tomorrow the job will be much worse than it is today.
The photos pictured here could be yours. Enter the 3rd Annual Georgia Outdoors Nature Photography Contest and win an opportunity to be part of a Georgia Outdoors episode. You could also win these other great prizes. Rules and restrictions apply.